What I'm about to show you is going to make you question every blood pressure reading you've ever taken at home. And when I reveal mistake number 1, the most dangerous mistake almost everyone makes, you'll understand why thousands of seniors end up in emergency rooms every year because of readings that were completely, catastrophically wrong. I'm Dr. Maria Lee, and I need to tell you something that could literally save your life today. That number you saw on your blood pressure monitor this morning? There's roughly a 70% chance it wasn't accurate. Not just a little off. Completely unreliable. And here's what worries me the most. Right now, somewhere, a senior is looking at a falsely high reading and panicking. They're reaching for medications they don't need or calling emergency services for a crisis that isn't actually happening. At the same time, somewhere else, another senior is seeing a falsely low reading, feeling reassured, and ignoring warning signs of a stroke that's about to occur. I've been a cardiologist for over 23 years, and I've seen both of these scenarios end lives, or permanently change them. Yet almost no one talks about the real problem. The device itself usually isn't the issue. The problem is technique. There are 11 critical points in blood pressure measurement where a single mistake can turn a perfectly accurate medical device into a source of dangerous misinformation. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what those 11 mistakes are. More importantly, you'll understand why mistake number 1 is so catastrophic that it can raise your reading by 20 points or more, enough to put you on medications that could actually harm you. But before I show you mistake number 1, you need to understand something fundamental about blood pressure measurement, something that changes everything and that most doctors never explain clearly. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn in the next several minutes will permanently change how you think about every blood pressure reading you've ever taken. Let me start with Margaret, because her story reveals mistake number 11, and it may surprise you how something so harmless can create such dangerous numbers. Margaret was 68, a retired teacher, and extremely careful about her health. She bought a highly rated blood pressure monitor, followed the instructions, and checked her blood pressure every morning without fail. For years, her readings were excellent. Around 125/78. Perfectly normal. She felt healthy and reassured. Then suddenly, everything changed. Over the course of a single week, her readings spiked. One morning it was 165/95. The next, 170/98. Then 168/96. Margaret was terrified. She thought she was heading into a hypertensive crisis. She wondered if her medication had stopped working. She called her doctor in a panic, convinced she needed urgent treatment. What Margaret didn't realize, and what makes mistake number 11 so dangerous, is that nothing about her health had changed. What changed was her routine. A few weeks earlier, her daughter had encouraged her to get a little more exercise. Good advice. So Margaret started walking to the end of her driveway each morning to get the newspaper. Just a short walk, maybe a couple of minutes. Then she climbed the stairs back up to her bedroom, where she kept her blood pressure monitor. It felt completely harmless. But here's what was actually happening. That short walk and brief stair climb, even though they didn't feel strenuous, were activating her cardiovascular system. Her heart rate was elevated. Her blood vessels were still dilated. Her nervous system was still in an active state. And she was measuring her blood pressure immediately afterward. Mistake number 11 is taking your blood pressure right after physical activity, even light activity, even activity that doesn't feel like exercise. Your body needs time to return to its resting baseline. Without that rest period, you are not measuring resting blood pressure. You are measuring active blood pressure. And that difference can be 30, 40, even 50 points. Margaret's true resting blood pressure was still around 125/78. But she was measuring 170/98 simply because her body hadn't had time to settle. And here's where it gets more dangerous. Her doctor trusted those home readings and increased her medication. Now her true blood pressure, the one no one was seeing because of the measurement error, dropped too low. Around 95/60. Margaret became dizzy and weak. She nearly fainted twice. All of this happened because of a simple measurement mistake that went unnoticed. The rule is simple, but it is absolutely non-negotiable. Before measuring your blood pressure, You must be completely at rest for at least 5 full minutes. No walking, no stairs, no carrying items, no household tasks, just sitting quietly. This allows your cardiovascular system to return to a true resting state. Now, before we move on to mistake number 10, there's something critical you need to understand. Mistake number 11 was innocent. Margaret had no idea she was doing anything wrong. But mistake number 10 is different. People do it on purpose, thinking it doesn't matter. And it adds 10 to 15 points to your reading every single time. I'm going to tell you exactly what mistake number 10 is in just a moment. But first, I need to show you something that will permanently change how you understand blood pressure measurement. There's a reason your doctor takes more than one reading. There's a reason hospitals follow strict protocols. It isn't only about the device. It's about understanding that blood pressure is one of the most sensitive vital signs we have. It reacts to everything: your posture, your emotions, and even your bladder. Yes, your bladder. And that brings us to mistake number 10. Let me tell you about Harold, because his story reveals something most people never learn about blood pressure physiology. Harold was 74, a retired engineer, and he loved data. He measured his blood pressure at the exact same time every morning, 6:30 a.m. sharp, right after waking up. For 15 years, it was the same routine, same time, same chair, same process. His numbers were steady, about 130/80, year after year. Then something changed. His readings started creeping up: 150/90, then 155/92, same time, same chair, same technique. His doctor ordered tests. Everything came back normal. No new medications. No major dietary changes. No obvious stress. The mystery dragged on for months until I asked Harold one simple question: had anything changed in the evening? That's when he remembered. Another doctor had told him to stay better hydrated and drink more water. Good advice. So Harold started drinking a large glass of water before bed every night. Great for hydration, except for one problem. He was waking up each morning with a very full bladder. And he was taking his blood pressure before going to the bathroom. That is mistake number 10. A full bladder can raise blood pressure by 10 to 15 points, sometimes even more. Here's why, and it matters because it shows just how sensitive these readings really are. When your bladder is full, it increases pressure in the abdomen. That pressure affects nearby blood vessels. Your body compensates by tightening other vessels to maintain circulation. Your sympathetic nervous system also activates to help you maintain control. Heart rate nudges upward. Blood pressure rises. The moment Harold began emptying his bladder before measuring, his readings dropped right back to 130/80. 15 years of reliable tracking nearly got derailed by one small change in routine. And Harold's story teaches an important lesson because it sets up the mistakes that are coming next. Blood pressure is not a fixed number. It's a moving target, changing from moment to moment based on dozens of variables. Every mistake we're discussing takes advantage of one of those variables. And mistake number 1, the one I'm saving for last, takes advantage of the biggest variable of all. Before we get there, I need to show you mistake number 9. This one sounds trivial until you understand the mechanism. And once you do, you'll realize why even a small violation can completely corrupt your reading. Mistake number 9 is talking or moving during the measurement. I know what you're thinking. Of course you should sit still. Most people believe they already know this. Diane thought she knew it too. Diane was 71. She checked her blood pressure every evening at 7 p.m. while talking on the phone with her daughter. It was their routine. They'd chat for about 30 minutes. Diane would wrap the cuff, press start, keep talking, write the number down, and continue the conversation. She did this for 2 years. Her evening readings were always 15 to 20 points higher than her morning readings. Her doctor couldn't explain it. Different medication effects at different times? Stress happening at home? Nothing fit until I asked her to show me exactly how she took the evening measurement. The phone call, the talking, that was the answer. And here's what Diane said, something I hear all the time, but I was just talking. I wasn't upset. How could that possibly matter? Here's how. Even calm conversation activates muscles in the throat, chest, and abdomen. It changes breathing patterns. It stimulates the nervous system. Your diaphragm moves differently. Your chest muscles engage. Your heart pumps against slightly different pressures. Meanwhile, the cuff is trying to detect extremely subtle pressure waves in the artery. It's looking for the exact moment blood flow becomes turbulent, and then the moment it becomes smooth again. Those moments create precise signals the device depends on. Any talking, any movement, any muscle activity interferes with those signals. And here's the dangerous part. The device usually doesn't fail in an obvious way. It doesn't flash an error. It gives you a number. A wrong number, often a higher number. Diane's blood pressure wasn't truly higher in the evening. Her technique was contaminating the measurement. The moment she began measuring in complete silence, her evening readings matched her morning readings perfectly. And this is where everything connects to something much bigger, something that becomes absolutely critical when we get to mistake number 1. Every error we're discussing teaches the same lesson. Blood pressure measurement is a precise medical science being performed in very imprecise conditions. Your home is not a laboratory. You are not a trained technician. Yet you're expected to get laboratory quality results. The only way that works is by eliminating every possible source of variability. And the mistakes still ahead, especially mistake number 1, are the ones that introduce the greatest variability of all. Now let me show you mistake number 8, because this is where many people suddenly realize they've been doing almost everything wrong. Mistake number 8 is incorrect arm position. This has nothing to do with comfort. This is about physics, specifically gravity and how it directly affects pressure inside your arteries. Let me tell you about Thomas, 76 years old, who came to my office convinced his home blood pressure monitor was broken. At home, his readings were consistently around 115/70. In my office, they were 140/85, a difference of 25 points. He had bought 3 different monitors, convinced they were all defective. He had spent hundreds of dollars. He was frustrated and confused. I asked him to show me exactly how he measured his blood pressure at home. He sat down on his couch, rolled up his sleeve, and held his arm straight out in front of him, elevated, unsupported, while the cuff inflated. That was the problem. His arm was about 6 inches above heart level. When your arm is above your heart, gravity reduces the pressure in the arteries of that arm. Blood has to work against gravity to reach your elevated hand, and the pressure drops. Your reading becomes falsely low. If your arm is below your heart, hanging down or resting low on your lap, gravity increases the pressure. Blood flows downward more easily, and your reading becomes falsely high. This alone can change your reading by 10, 15, even 20 points. Here is the correct position, and I need you to picture this clearly because it is critical. Sit in a chair with back support. Place your feet flat on the floor. Rest your arm on a table or armrest so that the middle of the cuff, once it's placed on your upper arm, is exactly level with the center of your chest. That is where your heart is. Not approximately. Not close enough. Exactly at heart level. Use a pillow or cushion if you need to. Your arm must be fully supported from elbow to wrist. Relaxed, not tense, not held up by muscle effort. The moment Thomas corrected his arm position, his home readings immediately matched what we saw in the office. And here's what his story reveals about the nature of these mistakes, because this matters for what's coming next. Most people don't realize they're making these errors because the monitor still gives them a number. It looks official. It looks medical. It's displayed on a digital screen, so it must be accurate, right? Wrong. The monitor can only be as accurate as your technique allows. And technique has 11 critical points of failure. We've covered 4 so far. 7 remain. And I need you to understand this. The mistakes that are coming are even more dangerous because they are even more common. But before I show you mistake number 7, I need to ask you something. If what you're learning right now is valuable, if you're realizing you've been making these mistakes, I want you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to this channel. My mission is to give you information that many people pay thousands of dollars to learn in courses. I'm sharing it freely because seniors deserve access to the truth. Second, share this video. Think about your family, your friends, anyone who measures their blood pressure at home. This information could prevent an unnecessary emergency room visit or medications they don't need. Now let me show you mistake number 7. And this one shocks people because it involves something almost no one ever thinks about: the blood pressure cuff itself. Specifically, the size of the cuff. This mistake doesn't just change your reading by 10 or 15 points. It can throw it off by 30, 40, even 50 points. Let me tell you about Ruth. Ruth was 69, petite, about 5'2", with thin arms and a small frame. She had been treated for high blood pressure for 3 years based on home readings consistently around 155/92. Her doctor kept increasing her medications. First 1 drug, then 2, then 3. Nothing seemed to work. Her home readings stayed high. But Ruth felt awful. She was constantly dizzy, weak, exhausted. She could barely function. These are classic signs of blood pressure that is actually too low. Yet her home monitor kept insisting it was too high. When she came to me for a second opinion, I looked at her and immediately suspected the problem. I measured her upper arm circumference, 9 inches. The cuff she was using was a standard adult size, designed for arms between 11 and 14 inches. It was far too large for her arm. Here's what happens when a blood pressure cuff is too large. It doesn't compress the artery correctly. Instead, the pressure is spread over too wide an area. The monitor interprets this as needing more pressure to detect blood flow, so it inflates higher than necessary. The result is a falsely elevated reading. We fitted Ruth with a small adult cuff. Her very first reading with the correct size was 118/75. Normal. Healthy. Exactly where it should be. She had been over-medicated for 3 years. Her dizziness and weakness were not signs of uncontrolled blood pressure. They were symptoms of blood pressure that was actually too low, all caused by an incorrect cuff size. But there's another side to this problem, and it's just as dangerous. If the cuff is too small for your arm, it overcompresses the artery. In that case, the reading can come out falsely low. You could have dangerously high blood pressure and never know it. Most cuffs have markings that show the appropriate arm circumference range, something like fits arms 9 to 13 inches or 13 to 17 inches. You need to measure your upper arm halfway between your shoulder and elbow. Use a measuring tape. Measure the circumference. Compare it to the range printed on your cuff. If your arm falls outside that range, you need a different cuff size. This is not optional. It is not a minor detail. Using the wrong cuff size makes your monitor effectively useless. And here's why Ruth's story matters so much as we move closer to mistake number 1. Every error we're discussing compounds the others. Wrong cuff size plus incorrect arm position plus talking during the measurement doesn't give you 3 small errors. It gives you 1 large, misleading result. And mistake number 1, the one almost everyone makes, is the mistake that amplifies all the others. Before we get there, let me show you mistake number 6, because this is where people start to realize that blood pressure monitoring isn't just about taking a reading. It's about taking the right reading at the right time in the right way. Mistake number 6 is measuring at inconsistent times. Let me tell you about Franklin, 72 years old, who was driving both himself and his doctor crazy with his blood pressure log. Franklin measured whenever he happened to remember. Sometimes early in the morning. Sometimes late morning, sometimes mid-afternoon, sometimes at night, completely random. His readings ranged from 115/70 to 160/95. Wild swings. His doctor had no idea what to do with that information. Was his blood pressure uncontrolled? Was the medication failing? Should the dose be increased? Should another drug be added? The data was meaningless because it lacked context. Here's what Franklin didn't realize. Blood pressure follows a natural daily rhythm. It's lowest during sleep. It rises sharply in the early morning hours, something known as the morning surge. It typically peaks late morning or early afternoon, then gradually declines through the evening. This pattern is normal and healthy. When you measure at random times, you're capturing different points along that normal curve. The changes you see aren't blood pressure spiraling out of control. They're normal physiological fluctuations. We gave Franklin a simple, consistent protocol. Measure twice a day, once in the morning, before breakfast, and before taking medications. once in the evening, before dinner. Same times every day. The chaos vanished. His morning readings settled around 125/78. His evening readings around 120/75. Consistent. Predictable. Reassuring. His blood pressure had been fine all along. We had simply been looking at random snapshots instead of a coherent pattern. And Franklin's story highlights something crucial as we move toward mistake number 1. Data without context is just noise. A single blood pressure reading tells you almost nothing. A series of readings taken under different conditions tells you nothing. Only readings taken consistently at the same times with the same technique give you information you can actually use. Mistake number 1 corrupts that information at the source, making everything that follows unreliable. Now let me show you mistake number 5. This one sounds obvious, but almost no one does it correctly. Mistake number 5 is not keeping a proper log. Let me tell you about Sandra, 67 years old, who came to her appointment and told me her blood pressure at home was pretty good mostly. I asked for details. She thought it was usually around 130, maybe 140. She couldn't remember the lower number. She didn't have dates or times. She'd been measuring for months, but she had nothing written down. Here's the hard truth. If you don't log your readings, you're wasting your time. Memory is unreliable. People remember the frightening high numbers and forget the normal ones. They round. They estimate. None of that helps your doctor. We need real data. Every reading. The exact date. The exact time. Both numbers, systolic and diastolic. And any relevant notes such as feeling stressed, having an argument, forgetting a dose of medication, or feeling unwell. That is how blood pressure data becomes meaningful. We set Sandra up with a simple notebook. Date, time, first reading, second reading, third reading, and notes. After just 2 weeks, a clear pattern emerged. Her evening readings were consistently about 15 points higher than her morning readings. We adjusted the timing of her medication, and the problem was resolved. When your arm is above your heart, gravity reduces the pressure in the arteries of that arm. Blood has to work against gravity to reach your elevated hand, and the pressure drops. Your reading becomes falsely low. If your arm is below your heart, hanging down or resting low on your lap, gravity increases the pressure. Blood flows downward more easily, and your reading becomes falsely high. But it only worked because we finally had real data. And this connects directly to the mistakes still ahead, especially mistake number 1. You cannot identify patterns in corrupted data. If mistake number 1 is adding 20 points to every reading, then carefully logging those readings just gives you a detailed record of incorrect numbers. Now let me show you mistake number 4. This is where we start getting into the psychological factors that distort blood pressure readings. Mistake number 4 is measuring while stressed, anxious, or emotionally upset. This one is particularly dangerous because it creates a vicious cycle. Let me tell you about Edward, 70 years old. Every morning, Edward checked his blood pressure while watching the news. He would sit on the couch, turn on the television, and take his reading during the broadcast. His numbers were consistently high, around 155/92. He was convinced his medication wasn't working and that he needed a higher dose. But here's what was really happening. The news was stressing him out. Crime, politics, disasters, each story triggered a stress response. Cortisol release, adrenaline, activation of the sympathetic nervous system. Heart rate increased, blood vessels constricted, blood pressure spiked. And Edward was measuring right in the middle of that physiological reaction. I asked him to measure in a quiet room before turning on the television. His readings immediately dropped to around 128/80. A difference of 27 points, simply by removing the stress trigger. Now here's where this becomes even more concerning. Many people measure their blood pressure because they're worried about their blood pressure. The act of measuring creates anxiety. The anxiety raises the blood pressure. They see a high number. That number creates more anxiety. They measure again. It's even higher. The cycle feeds itself. This is known as white coat hypertension when it happens in a medical office, but it happens at home just as often. The solution is creating a calm measurement environment. A quiet room. Television off. Phone silenced. Sit quietly for 5 full minutes before measuring. Practice slow, deep breathing. Allow your nervous system to settle. If you've just had an argument or received stressful news, wait. Measuring in that state will not give you an accurate reading. And here's how this ties back to mistake number 1. If you're making mistake number 1, even in a calm state, your reading will be wrong. If you're stressed and making mistake number 1, the combined error becomes enormous. Now let me show you mistake number 3. This one surprises people because most have never even thought about it. Mistake number 3 is not checking both arms. Most people have a small difference between arms, often 5 to 10 points higher in the dominant arm. That's normal. But sometimes the difference is much larger, 15, 20 points or more, and that can signal serious arterial disease. Let me tell you about Patricia. Patricia was 73. She had been measuring her blood pressure on her left arm for 5 years. Her readings were always excellent, around 120/75. She felt healthy, no symptoms, no concerns. During a routine exam, her doctor measured both arms. Left arm, 120/75. Right arm, 165/100. A 45-point difference. That immediately triggered further testing, which revealed significant arterial narrowing on the right side and a high stroke risk. She needed urgent treatment. If she had only continued measuring the left arm, this might not have been discovered until a catastrophic event occurred. Here's what you should do. When you first begin monitoring at home, measure both arms for 1 full week. If one arm consistently reads more than 10 points higher, use that arm for all future measurements and inform your doctor. If both arms are within 10 points, choose one and use it consistently. Recheck both arms every few months. A new, significant difference requires immediate medical attention. And here's what Patricia's story teaches us and why mistake number 1 is so dangerous. Blood pressure monitoring is meant to detect problems. It's supposed to warn you. But if your technique is fundamentally flawed, if mistake number 1 is present every time, you're not detecting anything. You're collecting noise. And noise can hide life-threatening signals. Now let me show you mistake number 2. We're getting very close to the most dangerous mistake of all. Mistake number 2 is taking only one reading per session. Blood pressure changes minute by minute. A single blood pressure reading is rarely representative. That's why the gold standard is taking 2 or 3 readings, 1 to 2 minutes apart, and then averaging them. Let me tell you about Vincent, 68 years old, whose experience shows exactly why this matters. Vincent took only 1 reading each morning. His numbers were all over the place. One day, 125/80. The next day, 150/95. Then 135/82. He couldn't understand why his blood pressure seemed so unstable. His doctor was just as confused. Was the medication working or not? We had Vincent take 3 readings in my office. The first reading was 148/92. 2 minutes later, the second reading was 135/84. 2 minutes after that, the third was 130/80. His body simply needed time to relax. That first reading was consistently elevated. We gave him a new protocol. 3 readings per session, 1 to 2 minutes between each. Record all 3. Average the second and third readings. That average is your true blood pressure for that session. Suddenly, everything made sense. His blood pressure was well controlled, averaging 128/78. The chaos wasn't real. It was just normal variability being misinterpreted. But here's the critical point. This protocol only works if you are not making mistake number 1. If mistake number 1 is adding 20 points to every reading, then taking 3 readings just gives you 3 wrong numbers. And now we've arrived. Mistake number 1. The most common. The most dangerous. The most devastating mistake in home blood pressure monitoring. The mistake almost everyone makes. The mistake that can add 15, 20, even 30 points to your reading. The mistake that puts people on medications they don't need or falsely reassures them when they are actually at risk. Are you ready? Mistake number 1 is placing the cuff over clothing or on a rolled-up sleeve. I know what you're thinking. That's it? That's the big mistake? Yes. And this is exactly why I saved it for last. Let me tell you about Alice, 74 years old. Careful, organized, and meticulous. She followed every rule. Same times every day. Rested beforehand. Proper puster. Perfect logs. Yet her home readings were consistently 20 points higher than what we measured in the clinic. Neither she nor I could understand why until I asked her to show me exactly how she measured. She sat down, rolled up her cardigan sleeve, placed the cuff, and started the measurement. There it was, the rolled-up sleeve. When you roll up a long sleeve, you create a tight band of fabric around your upper arm. That fabric acts like a tourniquet. It restricts blood flow and increases pressure below the constriction. The cuff cannot measure accurately because the artery is already being compressed. The result is a falsely high reading, sometimes dramatically high. Placing the cuff directly over thin clothing is just as dangerous. A t-shirt, a blouse, even light fabric interferes with the cuff's ability to detect subtle pressure changes in the artery. The signals are dampened. Errors occur. Usually the reading is falsely high, but sometimes it can be falsely low. You never know which direction the error will go. You only know the number is wrong. Alice removed her cardigan and measured on bare skin. Her reading dropped from 155/95 to 132/78, a 23-point difference. She had been placed on medication she didn't need and had suffered fatigue and dizziness for years, all because of a rolled-up sleeve. The rule is absolute. Always measure on completely bare skin. Remove clothing entirely. Do not roll up sleeves. Take off the shirt if necessary. Measure in a private room if modesty is a concern. Keep a sleeveless top specifically for blood pressure checks if needed. The cuff must be in direct contact with your skin. No fabric. No bandages. No jewelry. Nothing. This single correction can change readings by 10 to 25 points. It can prevent unnecessary medications. It can reveal hidden hypertension that was being masked. It is the single most important technical rule in home blood pressure monitoring. Now you know all 11 mistakes. You understand why each one matters. You understand how they compound each other. And you understand why mistake number 1 is so critical that everything else depends on it. Let me give you the complete gold standard protocol. Follow this exactly. First, timing. Measure twice daily. Morning before breakfast and before medication. Evening before dinner. Same times every day. Second, preparation. Use the bathroom. Empty your bladder completely. Avoid caffeine, exercise, and smoking for at least 30 minutes beforehand. Third, positioning. Sit in a chair with back support. Feet flat on the floor. Rest your arm on a table so the middle of the cuff is exactly at heart level. Arms supported and relaxed. Fourth, bare skin. Remove all clothing from the upper arm. No rolled sleeves. Bare skin only. Fifth, rest. Sit quietly for 5 full minutes. No talking. No phone. No movement. Sixth, multiple readings. Take 3 readings, 1 to 2 minutes apart. Stay still and silent. Seventh, calculate. Average the second and third readings. That is your blood pressure for that session. Eighth, log everything. Date, time, all readings, any relevant notes. Ninth, share the data. Bring your full log to every appointment. Follow this protocol and home blood pressure monitoring becomes a powerful medical tool instead of a source of confusion. You gain confidence. Your doctor gets reliable data. Together, you can make better decisions. Before we finish, let me tell you about George, 77 years old, because his story brings everything together. George made every mistake we've discussed. Random timing, measuring while moving, watching TV, full bladder, talking on the phone, arm in his lap, wrong cuff size, 1 reading only, no log, sleeve rolled up. His reported blood pressure ranged from 110 to 180. Total chaos. He was placed on 4 blood pressure medications. He felt dizzy, weak, and miserable. Retirement was becoming unbearable. We started from scratch. Proper cuff. Correct technique. 2 weeks of clean data revealed the truth. His blood pressure was well controlled on just 2 medications. He had been over-medicated for years based on bad measurements. We reduced his medications carefully. His energy returned. The dizziness disappeared. His blood pressure stabilized at 128/76. All of that suffering was preventable. Blood pressure is one of the most important health numbers you have. It predicts stroke, heart attack, kidney disease, and cognitive decline. Managing it properly can add years to your life. But you can only manage what you measure accurately. Now you have the full protocol. You know the 11 mistakes. You know how to avoid them. Use this information. Share this video with anyone who measures blood pressure at home. Subscribe for more clear, practical medical guidance. Your health deserves accurate data. Your doctor deserves reliable information. And you deserve the peace of mind that comes from knowing your numbers are real. Take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next video.